Thanks for joining us today. My name is Merida Escandon-Gasbaro. I'm the Director of Admission for the programs in the Milano School of International Affairs, Management, and Urban Policy, the School of Media Studies, the MFA in Creative Writing, and the Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages master's programs. So I want to welcome you to our graduate application process seminar, also known as How to Demystify the Application Process for Graduate Study. And I'm joined today by Henry Watkin, who's the Associate Director for the New School for Social Research. And when I say we're here to tell you and help you demystify the application process, we will. We're going to spend an hour together talking about deadlines, the application itself, statement of purpose, all right, recommenders, all those pieces that are important parts of the application and help you put together a strong application. Henry and I are here to help you put forth as strong an application as you possibly can. Before we do that, though, we do want to tell you a little bit about our university and the programs to give you context, to help you fill out the application, all right? And many of you, were you here for the plenary session, for the beginning, the welcome session, and you heard about, from our president, you heard from deans, you know about our history and our innovation since 1919. You know we're about preparing graduate students to achieve their creative potential and lead innovation. A lot of our programs integrate those two pieces, those important pieces of creativity and innovation with relevance, with practice, all right, with a sense of accomplishing the common good. And those are all important pieces for us as we're talking about our graduate programs.
Okay, so to reiterate something you may have heard this morning about the history of the New School, it was founded in 1919 by a group of professors from Columbia University who resigned from that institution because one of their colleagues had been fired for protesting U.S. involvement in the First World War. They came down to Greenwich Village in order to found a school where new ideas could be entertained, new ways of looking at education, new ways of looking at society as a whole could be furthered and taught. The institution today consists of a number of different schools that are listed here on this list. We'll be talking mainly about the New School for Social Research and those schools that are grouped under the title Schools of Public Engagement. But we also have the Parsons School of Design and the College of Performing Arts. Okay, the New School for Social Research was founded in 1933 by Alvin Johnson, who was then president of the New School. He brought over a group of 10 scholars from Germany who had lost their jobs in universities, either because of their racial background or because of their political views, or for both. They were 10 prominent social scientists, in the case of Frieda Wunderlich, actually a member of the National Parliament. He brought them over to found a school of social science. It was originally called, in its first year, the University in Exile. There's a famous photograph from the New York Times. If any of you have a subscription, you can look it up in Times Machine, of the founding 10. Along with Alvin Johnson. In the next year, it was called. The name was changed to the Graduate Faculty of Political and Social Science, and in 2005, the name was changed again to the New School for Social Research. The division offers master's programs of 30 credits, or in the case of the Master of Science in Economics, 45 credits, and PhD programs which require 60 credits, including the 30 earned at the MA level, and 90 credits for clinical psychology. And these are the programs of the New School for Social Research. I won't go over all of them, but I'll let you take a look at the slide for a few minutes. The first 6 of those, anthropology through sociology, offer both master's degrees and PhD. The next three are MA programs only, and we have also two certificate programs, both of them fairly new. But these are these are what the offerings are in terms of degrees for the New School for Social Research.
Let's talk about, to help you submit your application, the reason we're going through these schools is that you will need to be familiar with their names in order to fill out the application. So if you're interested in the Milano School of International Affairs, Management and Urban Policy, and you're interested in any one of the programs that are listed under there, you will be applying, selecting the schools of public engagement on your application to find the selections of those programs. The same, if you're applying to any of the programs in the schools of media studies. All right, so that includes our MA and MS in media studies and media management, respectively, our certificate in documentary studies, and also the certificate in media management. Also, if you're applying to the MA in teaching English to speakers of other languages, or the MFA in creative writing. Distinctions about these programs is they do vary in terms of credits. So the certificates may range from 12 to 18 credits. The master's programs generally are 30 to 42 credits in total. They can be done on a full-time or part-time basis for the most part. Our PhD in public and urban policy is 60 credits. And then for those of you who may be interested in either online only or on-campus only or hybrid opportunities, many of our programs do allow for those, even if it's just a single course that may be available online. But the MA in media studies, the MS in media management, our certificate in media management, and our MA in TESOL are degree programs and certificates that can be earned fully online or on campus or in a blended format.
Okay, now we're going to come to the heart of our presentation, which is the admissions process itself, how to put together the strongest application you possibly can. And we'll be going through various parts of the application. What we want to stress at this point is that our application is an online application. You can gain access to it through any of the program websites. You click on the Apply Online button, and it will take you to a site where you can set up an account, where you can start your application. All parts of the application can be submitted online. And we'll be telling you about the individual parts one way or the other. But what we'll be going over these the various parts here. But what we want to stress now is that it is an online application and that you can apply totally online.
You can also fill the application in stages. So let's say you're writing and you're rewriting and writing a third time that statement of purpose. You can put in the names of your recommenders, put in your resume, and then go back and upload your statement of purpose. Just make sure to save it at every stage of your logging into the application.
And also, you do not have to wait until your recommendations or your test scores have been submitted. You can submit your part of the application before those parts come in, or if your recommenders precede you, your recommendations will be kept safely until your application actually does arrive. And likewise with your test scores. So don't feel you have to wait for either of those two items, which are external to your part of the application, before you submit the application. Finish the application, and then you can submit it. Okay, that's mine, right?
That's mine.
That's yours.
All right, let's talk about transcripts. All right. At the point of application, what we're asking for are unofficial transcripts or marks. You upload those. Please make sure you scan the front and the back of your transcripts so that we get any key or scales or information from your institution about how to read your transcripts. All right. We do require unofficial transcripts from all post-secondary institutions that you've attended. If the transcripts or the marks are not in English, we do need them translated by a certified translator. If you did any study abroad, you'll want to provide that to us unless the coursework and the grades are included on your main transcript. So let's say you were in London for a semester or 2 semesters, and your grades appear on your transcripts from your degree granting institution. Don't worry about them. Okay. If you studied for 2 years at a community college, earned an associate's degree, and you transferred to a 4-year baccalaureate, and your transcripts don't show grades, you will need to go to your community college to get a copy of your transcripts so we can see them. Remember, this is about providing the admission committee with as much information about yourself. The first piece that we're talking about are the transcripts. They will want to get a sense of your academics. If you did any dual enrollment in high school and you earned an associate's degree and that's part of your undergraduate degree, you will have to go back. If you've done an advanced placement, though, don't worry about them. All right? We're not going to ask you for the scores, but it's about having attended a previous institution. We will need to see those grades. Okay. For any of you with international credentials, we do a lot of the benchmarking of the transcripts, setting up an estimated GPA comparison from your home country's grading system to a 4.0 grade here in our office. So only if you are planning to get graduate transfer credit do you need to get your transcripts or marks evaluated by an agency like WES or FIS or ECE. Please remember, if you do use any of the services, the credential evaluation services, it must be a NACES approved agency. Visit the website, the NACES website, and they will give you information about the bona fide approved agencies that will evaluate transfer credit. So again, that's only if you are seeking transfer credit from a previous graduate experience and you happen to have international credentials.
The graduate record exam, a source of fear for many, but it is required only for the New School for Social Research. And it is required only from U.S. citizens and permanent residents who received their bachelor's degree within the 5 years immediately preceding the submission of the application. So in other words, if you were to submit your application today, but you had received your bachelor's degree on or before November 15th, 2010, you'd be exempt from the GRE, from the graduate record examination. Again, if you got your bachelor's degree in December of 2010, at this point you'd still be required to do the GRE, but on or before November 15th, as of today, you'd be exempt. Internationals are also exempt. A thing to keep in mind, however, is that the admissions committees often do like to see GREs even from the exempt group, on the one hand, and on the other hand, many people have gotten into NSSR without the GRE. So when to take the GRE if you are in the exempt group? Well, if you are changing your subject, for instance, if you were an English major in college and you want to now apply to the psychology program, you might want to take the GRE just as a way of bolstering your application. If your grades as an undergraduate were not strong, but you feel that you are a better candidate now, or you are a better candidate now, you might want to take the GRE just to show that the grades you earned in college were not necessarily representative of what you wanted to do. If you've taken the GRE already and you've got really good scores, you might want to submit them even if you're not required to do so. Please keep all of those things in mind. And if you have questions at any point, feel free to contact the admissions office. We'd be very glad to give you further guidance on this.
Okay, let's do this. If you're an applicant whose first language is not English, please make sure that you provide the English language proficiency exam, one of these 3 accepted, so TOEFL, IELTS, or the PTE scores. The minimum score required is 100 in the TOEFL, 7.0 in IELTS, or 68 in Pearson's. There are exceptions and exemptions. So if you're not required, they're not required if you happen to be a citizen of a country where English is the primary language. Alternatively, if you've earned a four-year degree from a U.S. college or from a university where English is the primary language of instruction, it's not required. You're not required to provide proof of English language proficiency. Let's stop right here and take a couple of questions for anything we've talked about up to this point, because when we start talking about the statement of purpose, I like to view those parts of the application moving forward as really those pieces that you have under your control. Transcripts, many of you have already finished your undergraduate degrees. The grades that you have are the grades that you have. All right, the application is pretty straightforward. All right, and then these standardized test scores, they're part of it. So before we start talking about shaping a statement of purpose or the autobiographical essays or statements that we require, what questions can we answer? And if you don't mind, we are live streaming this event, so I will repeat the question from the audience, all right? And then Henry and I will answer. So any questions up to any of the pieces so far? Yes, back there.
What's a post-secondary institution?
Post-secondary institution.
Anything after high school, okay? Anything that is a higher level than high school. In other words, a junior college, a university, a college,
Community college.
A community college, yes. Anything of that nature. Yes.
Back there.
For international students and the GRE scores, you have good grades in your transcripts and everything, and your GRE scores are lower for an international student, and you have good TOEFL scores. Is that taken into account? I mean, how heavy does that weigh towards the final?
Okay, the question is about GRE scores and international students. So please remember, as an international student, you are not required to provide GRE scores. All right, you are only required to provide proof of English proficiency, standardized test scores if you haven't taken them. Keep in mind the GRE is developed for U.S. citizens and permanent residents, individuals who have gone through a U.S. education system. All right, the test that you do need to provide is, if English is not your first language, is proof of English proficiency. So either the TOEFL, IELTS, or the PTE Pearson. Okay.
And I would suggest if you're exempt from the GRE and you have lower scores, don't bother submitting them, because it will only muddy the waters in terms of review. The reviewers are supposed to not look at them if you're an international, but they can't help taking a peek. So.
Let's take one more question, and then I really want us to spend some time on the remaining pieces of the application. Anyone? Back there.
Your program does not require the GRE and your grades are lower. The GRE and have good scores for the GRE, and so is that, for example, Parsons.
So a couple of things in terms of the question is, should you provide the GREs if you don't have to? Basically is the question, right? We're going to leave that as a judgment call to you, but also as an opportunity for us to speak with you individually. We're going to talk about other places on the application where you can discuss extenuating circumstances, where you can discuss less than stellar undergraduate grades than taking a GRE. All right, as we discuss GREs, if you take them and you do well, by all means, you want to flaunt those scores, send those in. If you're a career changer, or if you happen to be applying to the New School for Social Research and those are required, you'll need to take the GREs. For all the other programs which are optional, the test would be optional, I want you to think of them. They are optional. There is no reason for you to provide them. You will need to provide other means of explanation about telling us who you are. We have a holistic review of the application. So it is important that you remember that we're looking at the application as an individual, your goals and academic interests. And if you need to explain that, then you should do it in the other pieces of the statement of purpose. There's no reason for you to take the GREs in order to do that. Okay? Can we move? We're going to move on. We're going to talk about statements of purpose because, as I said earlier, as we were introducing the next few pieces of the application, these are really the supporting documents that you can shape, that you tell us about, you provide information about your goals and your interests, your passions, okay, your experiences, your past experiences, why you're applying to our program, and you can provide explanations. The statement of purpose likely is the one piece that you're going to see across all the programs, all the graduate programs that you may be considering. They want to hear who you are. They want to know about who you are. And so the statement of purpose is important. It may be called something else in other programs. It may be a statement of intents or goals. Some of our programs require 2 parts, and Henry will talk about the New School for Social Research's requirements. But basically what the statement of purpose is really the opportunity to get a fuller picture of who you are as an applicant. And you could split the statement of purpose into half of a piece of it is autobiographical and a personal narrative, but the majority of the essay, all right, it should be about your goals, your academic interests, your research interests, your professional interests. That's where you tell us how our programs benefit your goals and how you can benefit our community of learners. All right, it should not be a personal essay where you reveal every aspect of every decade of your life. All right, please make sure it's framed in the sense of a statement of purpose and intent. You have your resume to tell us about your experiences, your professional experiences, and your statement of purpose, what you do is provide a synopsis. Tell us about those experiences and how they've brought you now to the point of applying to graduate study. Henry, any in terms of specifically for NSSR?
So yes, NSSR actually mandates that you do divide your personal essay into 2 parts. The first part being autobiographical, 250 to 500 words. Obviously, in that small scope, you are not going to, as Merida already said, you're not going to be telling us the story of your life. You're going to be focusing on those aspects, those experiences you've had, those influences in your life that have led you to the point where you want to apply to this this program, especially if there are people you've studied with, books you've read, or just things you've gone through in your life that you think orient you toward our program. If there are accomplishments you're particularly proud of or you want to highlight some kind of a thing that you've done, you can mention that briefly in a short paragraph. And likewise, if there are things that need to be explained in your past record, then you can use a small paragraph in the autobiographical essay to discuss that. But again, the main focus of that part of the application, of that part of the essay, is why this program, why now? In other words, the past. The other part is about the future. What are your academic goals? What are your life goals? And how do you think this program can help you meet the goals you have set for yourself? And that means that you have done the research on the program. You've looked at the faculty web pages. You looked at their areas of concentration and their bibliography. You have looked at the course list, and you can discuss with us in that brief essay of 500 to 750 words how you think, which faculty members you think can be most helpful to you in attaining your goals. What courses will be most interesting to you as you go through your program. We are not asking you at this point to select a mentor or advisor, and there's no reason that you have to have a dissertation director chosen at this moment. But you should be able to discuss how this program is going to benefit you. And this is really, again, as much for your benefit as it is for the admissions committee's benefit, because you really need to be certain before you apply that this is the right program for you. And if you can convince yourself that it's the right program for you, you can probably convince the admissions committee as well.
Let's talk about the academic writing sample. We'll also split this into two parts. So I'm going to turn this over to Henry first so he can
Okay.
talk about the academic writing sample.
Okay, the writing sample is required for the New School for Social Research programs, all of them. The International Affairs program and the PhD in Public and Urban Policy. Other programs do not require it, but Meredith will talk to you about their relation to the writing sample. The writing sample, for the most part, most people will be applying to the MA program. It will be 10 to 20 pages. It should show not only that you write well in the English language, but that you ask serious questions, that you respond to them in a methodical and scientific way, that you are familiar with the conventions of academic writing, such as attribution and citation and margins, I have to say, bibliography. And all in all, that you are writing at a level of sophistication which suggests that you are ready to take the next step to go on to a master's program. That means you don't have to be giving us doctoral level work. If you did, you wouldn't need to apply to this program. But you should show that you have at least this, enough sophistication to succeed in a master's program. If you are applying for direct admission to PhD study, and there are only certain programs that allow you to do that in NSSR, you will need to supply a more substantial writing sample. When I say more substantial, I don't mean just in the number of pages. 30 or more is probably what you need to submit, but it also has to show that you have mastered a certain area of the field, that you know what the basic problems are. You can discuss the literature. You can use the material in a way that shows that, again, you are ready to go from master to PhD student. This is what we mean by sophistication. The system, by the way, will only accept up to about 42 pages of text, less if you have pictures illustrating your text. If you need absolutely to submit more than that, you will need to do so either by mail, by fax, or as a PDF attachment to an email. But remember also that the admissions committee has only a limited amount of time to read each application, that some of them deal with hundreds of applications. So please be kind to them so they can be kind to you, to use the phrase that Meredith hit upon last time. And make sure that what you have is interesting enough to hold their attention.
We're going to talk about resumes and recommendations in a couple of minutes, but I want to stop here to see if there are any questions about the statement of purpose or the academic writing sample. Okay, particularly for those of you who are applying to programs that require academic writing samples, or if you're stymied and you're preparing your statement of purpose. Any questions? Yes.
For the portfolios or supplies for the creative writing program,
Yes.
what exactly are you guys looking for? Are you looking for published clips? Are you looking for
Excellent. Okay. So the question is, what is creative writing looking for in the portfolio? And I will talk a little bit also about documentary studies. So does it need to be published? No, it does not. All right, it should be from portfolios from writing for the samples of a genre that you're interested in applying to. So if you're interested in poetry, then your portfolio should be a collection of samples of your poetry. Fiction, nonfiction, all of those in terms of appropriate, the appropriate sample. The creative writing program does allow for dual concentration. So if you're applying to the creative writing program and wish to be considered for 2 concentrations, you will need to provide 2 portfolios of the appropriate length. If any of you are interested in the documentary studies certificate, their portfolio is comprised of a video self-portrait, a creative sample of your choice, and then a proposed documentary studies project. right? Set in New York, really. Please go to the instructions for each one of the respective programs that may require a portfolio or a writing sample. We'll give you a little bit more details, but generally, if it's an academic writing sample, right, you can use an appropriate sample of your writing within social sciences. If you don't have an academic writing sample, then this is an opportunity for you to hone in your critical writing skills. And what we suggest here is that you compare 3 articles, but state your position and use those 3 articles or those 3 scholarly articles. Please avoid tabloids, anything along those lines. Those are not scholarly. So in terms of creating drafting and writing your academic writing sample from scratch, you want to use reputable sources. But also, please, it's about your stance. It's about your interest. So relate that and make sure you declare what your position is. And then use these other sources to support your position. And make sure they get cited accordingly. We're going to take one more question before we head on to resumes and recommendations. Do you have a question back there?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. What's your question?
Okay. Can it be something that we use, for example, in our bachelor's, if it provides proof and if it reports everything else? Can it be something that we've used before, for example, in a class or something?
So the question is, can the academic writing sample be a sample that you've prepared previously, either for a previous course or class? Yes, absolutely. What you may want to do, I mean, if it's something that took place in your position on events that took place 10 years ago, you may want to update some of the positions and look at where the new research has gone, all right, in terms of that. So yes, you can absolutely use a previous sample. It does not have to be a graded sample, all right? We get that question also. Okay, let's move on. Okay, resumes. We're going to focus on the first 3 bullet points on the resume, which is it's a standard business resume or CV. It should discuss your education and professional experiences, activities, and honors. And it certainly should talk about those experiences as they're related to your program, research of interest, and possible. All right, don't worry about it being more than 2 pages. It's not although we're saying a standard business resume, you're not using it to apply to a job. All right, so you can add more to that. Professional and educational experiences. If you're a recent grad, you will want to highlight your graduate experiences, your extracurricular activities. If you are a individual who has been out in the field for a long time, you will want to also focus in on your most relevant experiences.
And if I can add just one thing about the resume, please also include all your contact information, phone, mailing address, email address. It will help us keep in contact with you if we need to do so. We won't be making phone calls all the time, but in case we absolutely need to do so, we want to have an up-to-date contact information for you. Recommendations. All the programs that we're talking about today require only 2 recommendations, including the PhD programs. They should be from people who can tell us how you work with ideas, how you work with theory, what would make you a good candidate for this program. We will accept recommendations from any party. Don't feel that you have to have all professional, all academic, or one academic, one professional. We want recommendations from people who can say very concrete things about you and how you would particularly fit into this program. So make sure you discuss with your recommendation providers, your potential recommendation providers beforehand, what this program is about, what we're looking for, and make sure that you can't tell them what to write, but you can certainly ask them, can you write a positive recommendation for me for this particular program, including very concrete examples of how I work. The people to avoid in general are people who are personal relatives, personal friends, and also what I call the celebrity recommender who knows nothing about you. In other words, somebody could be a Nobel Prize winner, but if he doesn't know anything about you, then if this person cannot say anything about you, the recommendation is worthless. Please make sure that the person that you are choosing to recommend you knows you well and can say something positive about you. Speak to them first.
You don't have to wait for your recommenders to submit their letters of recommendation on your behalf in order to submit your application. What we'll do on the application is ask you for the names of two references, and you'll be able to enter their names, their contact information. You also indicate whether they will be submitting electronic references or letters of reference on your behalf, or whether they will be providing them some other way. So once you indicate those names, you save them, and then you could move on with the application.
And the same goes with test scores.
Right.
Don't feel that you need to have the test scores reported before you submit your part of the application. Once your application is done and everything is in place in your part, feel free to submit the other parts, the recommendations, and the test scores will be joined to your application afterwards. Okay, we are currently accepting applications for the spring for the programs you see on the slide here. The priority deadline has passed. It's October 15th, but don't feel that you cannot still apply. We are still considering people for both for admission and for partial scholarships for the spring semester. There are some programs that are not accepting applications for the spring. They would be PhD program, the PhD part of the program in New School for Social Research, the PhD in Public and Urban Policy, but all the other things that you see on this slide, we're still accepting applications, and you should try to apply as soon as possible, because once December rolls around, it's going to be harder and harder to get your application reviewed in a timely fashion. This is not to say to rush your application past the point where you perhaps don't submit as effective an application as you can. But once you've decided that you want to apply, and once you feel it's time, the spring would be the time you'd like to enter, please feel free to start and complete your application.
Our semester starts January 25th, so just to give you a time frame in terms of that.
Okay, and the fall 2016 deadlines. We are currently also accepting applications for fall 2016. You might feel it's a little early to think about that, but it isn't. January 15th is the priority deadline for the programs you see under that rubric, especially for New School for Social Research. If you want to be considered for some of the few full funding scholarships that they do have in the New School for Social Research, then you should definitely apply by January 15th. If you apply after that time, you can only be considered for partial funding. The other advantage to applying by January 15th is that you will be one of the first to receive a response in mid-March. In other words, you will get your decision amongst the first to get who are receiving letters. January 15th for those programs you see under that line. February 5th for Doc Studies, Media Studies, and Media Management. The TESOL program also, if you want to enter for the summer semester, please have your application in by January 15th.
The next two slides are about financing your education. 5 important pieces. As you're thinking about the application, you're also thinking about the following. If you are a U.S. and permanent resident, you will want to fill out the federal financial aid form. All right? And that's called the FAFSA.
And you can apply at fafsa.gov.
So fill that out as you're applying. Second is departmental scholarships or institutional scholarships. Now, on your application, you will find a question that asks, are you interested in being considered for scholarships? Unless you are a trust fund baby, unless you have an uncle who's going to pay for your graduate studies, my suggestion is that you not be timid or coy, and you say, yes, I wish to be considered for scholarships. Our scholarships at the university are partial or cover a percentage of tuition of scholarships. Some programs do offer 100% scholarships, but they can range, depending on the program, from 10% of tuition up to about 75 or 80%. And we can speak to you individually about particular programs if you want to know what the actual range is for your program of interest. Have your application in by the priority deadlines. We are still accepting for spring, and you can still be accepted or considered for spring for scholarships for spring. But if you're applying for the fall semester, you'll still be eligible to be considered for the scholarships, and you'd want to make sure you have your application in by the priority deadlines that we had discussed in the earlier slide. Okay, so those are departmental or institutional scholarships. We also encourage you to look to outside sources. On the board, we have here the name of a really good resource for grants, the Foundation Center. They're located here in New York, downtown in, I think, the Wall Street area. They moved their offices. So visit the Foundation Center. They give excellent workshops on grant writing. They have a depository of information about external scholarships or grant offering organizations. You should visit them. Closer to home, closer to us in the new school, the Student Financial Services webpage also gives you a good deal of information about external scholarships that may be available. If you're thinking of fall 2016, now is the time to look for those external scholarships. Many of them may have November deadlines or December or even January deadlines. So as you're filling out your application for admission for any one of the graduate programs here, you'll want to submit your applications also to any of these external scholarships. Please, by all means, if you belong to professional organizations, check to see if headquarters or any of those organizations may have scholarships. If you belong to, let's say, a journalism professional group or anything along those lines, they may offer external scholarships. And finally, the two other ways of paying for your education, which is really what our conversation is about, is graduate assistantships, okay, and internships. Graduate assistantships are on-campus job opportunities, and basically they are available to students once they enroll. Now they're posted in a number of different listservs at the institution, but you can absolutely find them at Working at the New School. It's on the bottom page of our homepage, and just click on the students portal and you'll find a listing. Please remember, those are open to students once they enroll. And then internships, those again may be paid. They are open to students. If you're an international student, you will have to talk to International Student Services about any international restrictions to getting paid for internships. But for the most part, they may also be available and help you pay for your graduate studies. So, a number of our programs, and many of our programs actually, students can attend full-time or part-time. The scholarships that we talked about for many of the programs in the Schools of Public Engagement can be applied to full-time or part-time study. Okay. Federal financial aid, also, if you're thinking of full-time or part-time study, those are options available to you. You will, though, need to study at least enroll in a minimum of 2 courses a semester in order to qualify for federal financial aid. Okay. Now let's take questions.
Are there questions?
While I try to see if, yes. Any questions?
From live stream.
Oh, we have a
Okay.
question from live stream. Again, we're going to have to ask the question on the microphone and then respond. What's the question?
What is the acceptance rate for social research specifically for the psychology program?
Okay.
So the question is, what is the acceptance rate for the psychology program?
Historically, we have been able to admit 70 to 80% of the students of the applicants who apply. That is, however, somewhat deceptive because due to the fact that New School has not had a very high profile in historically speaking, it tends to attract only those students who are more in the know. In other words, students who are more savvy and therefore probably better. We also know that we are competing for the attendance of those students with some of the most high-profile schools in the United States and elsewhere. So we are able to admit far more students than we know we could actually enroll. Anyone's application, however, will be judged solely on its merits, and one shouldn't think in terms of what are the percentages, but how good is my application.
Questions from the audience? Yes.
For the letters of recommendation, I have two questions about that. First one is about how long should we advise our recommenders to write? Like, about how long should it be?
Okay, that's a good question. So the question is, how long should your letter of recommendation be? And as you're advising or having a conversation with your reference, your letter of recommender, excuse me. That's something what you don't want is the one paragraph or the one-liner. All right, something that depends. I would say it may also depend on the program that you are interested in, but you do want them to talk about, or at least to provide examples, or an example of how you excelled in tasks or responsibilities, or coursework, if it's in an academic. All right, and provide examples of how well you did. We also want to hear about those, shall we say, transferable qualities, skills that you have that are not just about academics. It's about leadership, follow-through, ethics, professionalism. All right, so your reference should provide examples of those.
And I'd say, en revanche, don't a recommendation that goes on for 5, 6, 7 pages is not going to be pleasing to the admissions committee. They will not have a lot of patience for that. What should be said about you should be said succinctly. I think 2 pages at the most would be something that people would accept. 1 page is even better if they can say what they need to say. It's like, the question about, they asked Lincoln how long his leg should be, long enough to reach the ground. As long as the letter should be as long as it needs to be to really discuss how you work with ideas, how you work with theory, what would make you a good person for this, a good candidate for this, and not more and not less.
And then my other question was, I know you said to stay away from friends. I know this is a little bit of a specific question, but let's say you have somebody who started as a colleague, where you worked together and became friends. You don't necessarily work together anymore, but they have a good insight into how you think. Would you still recommend staying away from them because it is a friend, or because it's a little bit of like a gray area?
I hope my hesitancy is kind of answering your question. All right, the question is, can I use a friend? Can I use someone who was a colleague? There's something about that parallel in terms of knowledge that it can diminish the strength of the letter of recommendation. The time that sometimes that's required is if you're a freelancer, you're someone, you're reaching out to individuals who you've worked for, who are not necessarily been your supervisor. If you are in a position where you absolutely cannot get someone who's a supervisor or is an academic who knows about you, then you have to have a serious conversation with that colleague or that friend to provide concrete examples other than that you're a wonderful friend, okay? There should be a clarity in the professionalism and I guess a heft to what they're saying about you. All right, and they should be able to really get us a picture about, again, those skills, those attributes that you have as an individual that would be transferable as a solid grad student. So again, if you can absolutely stay away from those, I would recommend them. If it's for some reason you cannot, then my suggestion is please mention that somewhere in your application. All right, an addendum, some sort of something, and then tell why you're hard-pressed to find someone other than a colleague or a friend to provide a letter of recommendation on your behalf. Henry, do you?
I think one of the things that might really hurt a recommendation is a tone of chumminess.
Yeah.
This is my good pal, and we've known each other for years, and that kind of thing. That really, it needs to maintain a professional tone. It needs to maintain a certain objectivity, which says, I know this person's work because I've observed this, that, and the other. I can see this. And it's always better to have a supervisor rather than a colleague, because colleagues will never look at you in the same way as a supervisor and vice versa. So, be very, very careful about choosing associates, friends, things like that.
We've got a couple of minutes. Any questions from the live stream or anything? Okay, we've covered, and let's take yes.
About recommendation letters, so is it okay if I have a professor to write recommendation letters that then she no longer teaches in that university?
Absolutely.
Good.
No
The
problem.
question is, can you use academic recommender who is no longer affiliated with the institution where you studied? Absolutely. You can absolutely do that, yes. The same thing with supervisors. The person's no longer your supervisor. Individual has moved on to another organization. You still can use that individual, especially if he or she knows you for a number of years. Okay?
It doesn't change the fact that they've
Yes.
supervised your work.
Let's take a question back there. Yes.
Is it possible to submit electronically additional letters of recommendation aside from
Yes, it is possible. And the way to do it is to send it to this email address, enroll@newschool.edu. I would temper that by saying, please don't go overboard. It should not be more than one than is required. All right. If you start sending 6, 7, 8 recommendations, I will tell you the admission committee is going to wonder what's going on. Okay. So one more than is required is sufficient.
Should it come directly from the
Yes. The question is, should it come directly from the recommender? Yes. Okay. I think we're at 2 o'clock.
Do we have
Go 3 o'clock.
Do we have
Sorry,
another
3 o'clock.
stream question? Or?
No, quiet. Okay. Oh, one more question. Yes.
Yeah, about the scholarship. I know that you was talking about the percentage of the scholarship. I would like to know more about for the strategy design and management. I know there is a scholarship. I would like to know more about the percentage and how much they.
Sure. Can we talk offline? Okay. We're gonna say goodbye to our live streamers. All right. Thank the audience. All right, for sharing this hour with us and learning about the application process. I hope we've made it less intimidating, made you feel more in control of the whole process. If we haven't, we're here for the next hour or so to answer your questions. And thank you for joining us today. And Henry, thank you.
Thank you, Merida. And
All
we
right.
have our cards up here. If you
Yes.
don't have time to stay around, please feel free to take our cards and contact us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.